This is the new Kia K4. It's the replacement for the Cerato small car, and it's bigger than ever before. It's available as a sedan to start with, but there will be a hatchback coming as well by the end of 2025. And in this review, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about it and some stuff that you really need to pay attention to. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that bell, and let's get to it. The idea behind the Cerato has always been a small car at a small price, but this is a much bigger car than ever before, and the price tag is bigger than ever too. Now, there's still 4 different versions available of the K4 in Australia, and 3 of them have a less exciting 2-litre petrol engine. This top spec version, the GT line, comes with a turbo petrol, but I'll talk you through the powertrains in a few sections' time. First, let's consider what versions are available in our market. There's the entry-level S. It starts at just over $30,000 before on-road costs, or 33 grand or thereabouts, drive away, and it does have a decent amount of standard equipment and spec. Things like LED headlights, LED daytime running lights, LED tail lights, there's 16-inch alloy wheels, you've got cloth trim on the inside, a 12.3-inch media system, and a digital instrument display for the driver, which is a little bit less impressive than in some of the models above it. The media system includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and there's also connected services for this vehicle, so it is connectable to your smartphone app where you can control things like starting the car and also getting the air conditioning running. It's got e-call, so it can call emergency services for you if you're in a crash and the airbags are deployed, and there's over-the-air updates for the software as well across all grades. Now, if you want a few extra features but you're still looking at the budget end of the K4 range, there's one with a safety pack which gives you more than just some extra safety. It gives you more advanced autonomous emergency braking system, but I'll tell you more about that later on. And that S with the safety pack also gives you dual zone climate control and a different climate panel as well. So it looks a little bit different on the inside, the safety pack version of the S. Spend a few $1,000s extra and you'll get into the sport grade, which gets 17-inch alloy wheels. It also gets sat-nav, and there's 10 years of map updates for the sat-nav system as well. Beyond that is the Sport Plus model. It looks the same as the Sport grade, but it does add a couple of extra features on the inside. Fake leather trim, there's heated front seats, illuminated vanity mirrors, and an illuminated glove box, which you don't get in the lower grades. And it also gets aerodynamic wipers and auto wipers as well. And then there's this range-topping version. It's the GT line. There is no GT version this time around, so it's not a full-fat hot hatch style vehicle or hot sedan, but it does have a sportier suspension and a different set of wheels as well. So you get 18-inch alloy wheels for this version. It gets the turbo petrol engine, which I'll tell you more about later. It also gets cooled front seats, electric driver's seat adjustment as well, a heated steering wheel with a different looking steering wheel too. As well as that, the GT line model gets this interesting 2-tone interior finish, and there's an electronic tilt and slide sunroof as standard too. But it's about $47,000 drive away for this high grade version, so it's not necessarily as cheap as it used to be. So what else could you consider? Well, I've got some good alternatives. Let's talk about them now. If you just want a really thoughtful small sedan, the Toyota Corolla sedan is a fantastic choice. It's hybrid only these days, and it has several different versions available, starting at similar pricing to this and topping out at a similar price as well. But it is hybrid, it's really efficient, it's got a very clever cabin with lots of space and a big boot, and it's good fun to drive too. So the Corolla could be a walk-up start as an alternative to this if you're thinking about a small sedan. And otherwise, you might want to go and check out the Hyundai i30 sedan, which shares its underpinnings with this, and it has hybrid available. So you can get it as a petrol, a turbo petrol, a hybrid, and a high performance N model, which is just a couple of $1,000 more than this Pretender GT line version. And I think it's a really great choice if you are looking for something that stands out from the pack, because wow, does it have some styling on its side. And if you're thinking, well, this is a pretty large car, I may as well just shop for a medium-sized vehicle, why not look at the Skoda Octavia? There's a liftback model, which is really practical, or you can get it as a wagon. And the entry-level Select model, which I've done a review of, you can find the link in the description, it's bloody brilliant. It's really easy to live with, great to drive, and it doesn't have any of the annoying safety systems that this car has. Spoiler alert, there's some annoying safety systems in this car. But hey, what do you think? Would you choose a Skoda? Would you choose a Hyundai, a Toyota, or something completely different? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I said it was bigger, and it is significantly larger than the previous model. It is now 4.7 meters in length, so not far off a Camry in terms of overall length, and it's got a 2.7 meter wheelbase. It's about the same width as most other small cars, and it does have a slightly lower roofline than before. But the real thing here is the design. Whether you like this look or not will determine whether you think it's going to be right for you. I would say there are some elements to it which maybe don't agree with my eyes. Things like this rear panel, well, where it intersects with the door, it's just a bit strange. I don't know why the door handle has to be one of those hidden ones. It just seems incongruous with the front doors, and this whole design element here where it's a square, a triangle, a curve. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And at the rear, it kind of looks like a boat or a shoe or something, in my opinion anyway. You tell me what you think in the comments. But I do like the rear tail light bar, and yes, you can see it's got the K4 badge because it's a K4 now, not the Cerato. Okay, let's check out the boot. Now, no electric tailgate in any model, but it does have the sort of easy open element to it. It's also got gooseneck hinges, so watch this. If you stack your things up inside, you just have to be careful that you don't damage them. But it is a decent sized boot, no doubt about that. You'll see the capacity on your screen now. And every single version of the K4 comes with a temporary spare wheel underneath the boot floor. So a space saver. It's better than nothing in my opinion. And in terms of the smarts back here, well, there's not actually that much to talk about. You do have some little pull tabs for the seat releases for the seat backs, so you can fold those seat backs down in a 60-40 manner, as you can see there. And I think that it's going to be pretty practical, but hey, the hatchback might be the choice for you. Stay tuned and hit subscribe, and I will definitely do a review of it later in 2025. Tell you what, this is a far more upmarket and modern feeling interior than the existing Cerato. It was no bad thing, but this, well, it looks very different and it feels much plusher in some ways at least. Now, this is the top spec version, the GT line model, so it does have the two-tone finish, and I reckon it looks great. And I like this 3-spoke steering wheel because you've got a drive mode selector there as well. The other versions have a 2-spoke wheel, and it doesn't look as good as this in my opinion. Now, let's look at the seat trim here. Yes, the fake leather trim with the GT line embroidery in there. It looks really good, I reckon. Very upmarket feeling, and there's also a nice matching color trim down here as well. There's ambient lights across the dash here, and I think it looks pretty convincing from the design perspective. And yes, I do like the finishes in here, but I need to call out a couple of things, right? So this is all very hard plastic down there. There's also a bit of hard stuff happening over here as well. Now that's soft up there, but it's just maybe a little bit harder down here than you might be hoping for. You've got soft elbow pads, and you've got a nice fake leather steering wheel as well. And now let's look at these displays, shall we? So as I said, this is the top spec version. It gets the big 12.3 inch digital instrument cluster for the driver. It is configurable. You can play with the menus and change the way it looks if you want to. There's plenty of info on that screen as well, so you can cycle through and see what you need to see or want to see. And I reckon it's very easy to get your head around. You use those controls there to do so. That's also where your cruise controls are found and your auto steering system. So if you don't want the lane keeping system on, you can just hold that button down and that little thing up there will turn from green to orange. Now there's also some controls on this side, so your phone, your media, and also your modes. So that's for your stereo system, voice control, and this little star button here, which I've just set up in this car to adjust things like so. So you press the star and now it'll come up with your driver safety systems. So you can quickly turn things off if you want to, like your speed limit warning, or your driver attention warning, because that might get on your nerves as well. So there's a little forward camera. So that's this little camera here that keeps an eye on your eyes, and it will tell you if it thinks that you're not paying attention or you are tired. And it's been okay. It's better than some other examples that I've tested, but it was mainly the speed sign recognition system that got on my nerves while I was driving this. But we'll talk about that in a sec. Now, this 12.3 inch screen, it does have a sat-nav system built into it. It's got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it's got a heap of different menus available to you as well. As I said, it's got connected services, so it is online all the time, and it's got all the info there that you might want to find out about your weather or something like that. There's digital radio too, so you can basically get used to this screen very, very quickly. It's just like some other Kias that have come out recently. And in a big thumbs up, there is a volume dial down below, and you've got buttons down below to jump to some of the menus, and you've also got climate controls down here. So you can adjust your temperature there, your fan speed, your modes there, and there's another little climate panel there if you want to use it, but it's a bit obstructed by the steering wheel. So I would use those physical controls down there first and foremost, and that's what I have been doing. Now, down below here, you've also got a little charging tray there for your phone. There's USB-C ports as well, and in there is a little 12-volt, nicely hidden, I'd say. Good storage either side of the phone there. There's a pretty conventional looking shifter, and you've got an auto hold button there so the car won't creep forward in traffic if you don't want it to. Oh, that's your start stop button. All versions have that keyless start system and proximity unlocking as well, or keyless entry, and there's a parking sensors button there if you want. You can jump to your camera view there if you want to, just to see what's going on around the car. No surround view camera, as you can see, that's just the backup view. And down here you've got some configurable elements to your storage, so you can push these away if you don't want the cup holders in the way. If you do want them there, you can just open them up like so. You've still got storage space on either side if you want to put some extra stuff on the sides, and there's a decent sized center console bin here. There's a glove box. Yeah, some cars don't have glove boxes anymore. And you've got bottle holders in the door. So I think generally the design, the finish and the smarts of this vehicle are pretty good. Now up above, you've got illuminated vanity mirrors, but you have to press the button to turn the light on. They don't auto illuminate. And you've got your SOS call button there if you want to call roadside assist or whatever. And remember, it can call for you if you're in a crash and you need help. There's an auto dimming rear vision mirror as well, but I'll put a little text caption up there to tell you whether that's standard across the range. Look, I think this is a pretty nice cabin. This GT line gets the slightly larger sunroof as well. It's not a full panoramic glass roof, but you can close that as well. So that might be a plus for some. There's grab handle on the passenger side, but not on the driver's side. And let's do the sun visor test. Does it extend? It does. That's good to see. So should be able to block out some light on the sides on those country drives. All right, let's check out the backseat space, see what it's like. Right, so this seat is set for my driving position at 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall. You can see I've got plenty of knee room here, like lots. Toe room a little tight underneath the seat, and my knees are in quite a knees up position. So for taller, longer legged occupants, it might not be ideal. And the headroom in the back too, yeah, it is scalloped, so there's a little bit more space back here for someone tall to sit here, but anyone taller than 6 foot is probably going to feel a little bit cramped, I would say. You do have grab handles up here, and there are lights in the back too, which is just one button. They aren't individual lights, which might get on someone's nerves, maybe mine. And there's also directional air vents back here, which is a bonus. There's two USB-C ports down there, a little storage section. There is a transmission tunnel intrusion. For some reason, it must be this platform that has some all-wheel drive models built off it. So the middle seat footroom situation won't be great. You will be able to fit 3 adults across the back if you need to, but it won't be overly comfortable for the middle seat rider, I don't think. You've got ISOFIX points in the window seats, as you would expect. 3 top tether points up on this parcel shelf area too, so that is good to see. And yes, a flip down armrest with some cup holders in there too. All of that seems to make it a pretty comfy space. You've only got one mat pocket though, keep that in mind. So just the one meshy one on that seat back. Nice scratchy seat back for your kid to kick to their heart's content, but not one on that side. There's bottle holders in the doors too. Soft elbow pads back here, but again, it gets a bit scratchy up there. And that seems to be a very fingerprint friendly design. So that's not great. I don't like that material finish. It's on the fronts as well, as you can see right there. Look at those fingerprints. Gross. All right, I think that's enough about the interior of this car, but let's talk about the powertrain. As I mentioned, there are two different powertrain options available in the K4 lineup. The entry-level one, it's a carryover 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, not turbocharged. It's got 112 kilowatts, 192 newton meters, so it's hardly a firecracker, that engine. 6-speed automatic transmission, and it's front-wheel drive. And then there's this one here, which is the GT line version. It's a 1.6 litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder engine, has 142 kilowatts, 265 newton meters. If that means nothing to you, it's not super fast, but it is faster than some other cars in this class. And it now has an 8-speed automatic transmission. So the existing GT model had a dual clutch automatic transmission. This one is now an 8-speed torque converter auto. It's front wheel drive, just like the existing GT, but it doesn't have quite as much of a sporty racer character that the previous model did. We'll get to the driving stuff in just a sec, but I'll put some weights on your screen now so you can see for yourself that there is a little bit of a consideration when it comes to the weights. It's not a very heavy vehicle considering its size. Oh, and if you're wondering, where's the hybrid? Well, apparently there will be one. We just have to wait a little while for it. At this point in time, there isn't one available for our market, but hopefully there will be as part of this range later on. All right, let's go for a drive, shall we? See what it's like. Okay, starting off in the GT line version of the K4, it is not a Cerato GT replacement. Don't think of it that way. It's a different kind of car. It's not nearly as hardcore feeling. It doesn't have the snappy dual clutch automatic transmission and doesn't have the really sharp ride character that the existing Cerato GT had. This is a more sedate vehicle. It's still very comfortable. The ride is pretty well sorted, I have to say. Going to be more comfortable than a Cerato GT on daily duties, and it's still got the heavy steering, so it does feel pretty sporty to drive in the corners, but it's maybe not as dynamic a tool as the existing Cerato GT. But one thing I have noticed with the turbo petrol model is when I accelerated before out of a sort of intersection up a very fast hill, well, yeah, I noticed that there was plenty of torque steer, so where the steering wheel pulls to one side when you're planting the throttle, that's because it doesn't have any kind of clever electronic diff system at the front axle to try and mitigate that kind of behavior. Again, pointing back to the fact that this is not trying to be a hot sedan like an i30N. So if that's what you are looking for, maybe go and have a look at one of those, or a WRX could be a really good option as well. And that also comes down to the powertrain. It's still got the 1.6 litre turbo petrol and still with plenty of power and torque, but the 8-speed automatic transmission, well, it's a little bit doughier, a little bit slower, and not nearly as engaging or involving in stop-start traffic, let's say. And that is another way of saying that that's a backhanded compliment, that this is a better transmission for daily driving than the dual clutch auto was. But I have to say, it's still pretty good in most situations. This engine, this transmission, you've got paddle shifters if you want to take matters into your own hands, and there are different drive modes as well. If you put it in sport mode, it drives pretty sportily, I have to say. One thing you will probably notice with the GT line model is that there is a bit of road noise intrusion. Like, I feel like I'm raising my voice to speak to you over the tire roar, and this is a pretty good looking surface, and I'm only going 45 k's an hour. So yeah, it might be a little noisy on the rough surface roads that are common across Australia, and I found that to be the case a little earlier on at highway speed. So just keep that in mind. Maybe try and incorporate that into your test drive if you do a lot of that kind of driving. I think this is going to be a pretty compelling choice if you want the turbo thrust of the GT line. But let's go drive one of the other models with the 2-litre engine, which is not necessarily as exciting, and see what it's like. All right, so I've stepped into the Sport Plus now to see what it is like. It's the second most expensive model, but really strangely, it still has manual seat adjustment despite the fact they're fake leather seats with heating, and it has a plastic steering wheel, and that is a huge letdown. That steering wheel feels gross compared to the GT line. But I'll tell you what isn't gross is the drive experience more generally. The ride comfort here is excellent. This is a really comfy car. You can feel that it's got a bit more, well, let's say cushion to it than the existing Cerato, which was, even in the entry grades, a little on the firm side. like, you can still feel lumps and bumps in the surface, but it's, yeah, definitely more impressive than in some of the other cars on this part of the market. And look, I like the ride. I don't mind the steering either. It's still got a bit of a heavy artificial feeling to it, but at least it'll feel relatively direct in higher speed driving situations when you do need to quickly change direction, and at lower speeds it seems to be pretty light and agile feeling for parking duties as well. So those things aside, let's talk about this 2-litre engine. Yes, it's a 2-litre with a 6-speed automatic transmission, the same old MPI engine that's been around for what feels like generations in the Kia lineup. And I'll give it a little bootful here. Yep. Okay, so it does have some grunt. It's not necessarily the most thrilling engine, but the transmission is pretty smart in the way that it behaves, and it's even smarter if you do want to take matters into your own hands. You can put it into a manual mode. You don't get paddle shifters on the lower grades, but at least there is a manual shift action that you can perform if you want to, if you're not happy with the way that it's behaving. But I think for most people's needs, the engine and transmission in the lower grade versions will probably do the job, and it's a bit quieter as well. The GT line does have a bit more of a oral sensation to it. This is, well, a bit more hushed, and thankfully not as raspy as in the entry-level Cerato models that came before it, because they were a bit vocal. But this is, yeah, pretty nice. Pretty nice. I guess the big consideration here is the safety systems. You do have to get used to them, and if you don't get used to them, you won't like driving this car, because if you don't want to have to turn off systems every time you get into it, it's going to get old pretty quick doing that. And if you're okay with the safety systems being on all the time, like the driver monitoring camera and the speed sign recognition and that sort of stuff, you might be fine with it. But for me, those little annoyances that you have to adjust every single time you drive the car. But thankfully, there's a bit of a saving grace for this particular model. It does have a mute system. So if you don't like the speed sign warning system constantly beeping at you to tell you that it thinks that you're speeding or you've entered a new speed zone, you can simply just hold down the volume wheel on the steering wheel, and that will mute that warning alert. And let me tell you, that's so much easier than having to muck around with the screen. It's just a nice little user-friendly touch. The brakes in the 2-litre versions are a little bit smaller than in the GT line, but it still pulls up with a good amount of surety and good pedal feel as well. It's better in the GT line, but it's not too bad in the entry-level versions. Okay, next thing we need to talk about is fuel efficiency for this model range. Now, as I mentioned, there's a hybrid that's likely coming later on, and that will be the fuel efficiency king of this range. But at this point in time, it's the turbo petrol, which is the more efficient option on paper, at least. You'll see the official combined cycle number on your screen now. That's what you should be able to achieve across a mix of driving. And now I'll show you the other models in the range. So the S, the Sport, and the Sport Plus, they have a higher official number when it comes to fuel consumption. Now, if you're wondering what I've seen across this day of testing, well, on screen is the GT line number, and yeah, that's a bit higher than I was expecting across a bit of spirited driving, but also some regular stuff that you might do, so a little high. And now I'll put on screen what I saw in the 2-litre models that I tested on this launch drive. Though this is not what I do typically with a test car, and if you want me to do another review later on, make sure you leave a comment and I'll see if I can facilitate that in the future. And speaking of the fuel consumption stuff that you need to know about, all versions can run on 91 RON regular unleaded petrol. So that might be a plus in your book. And they do have a pretty decent sized fuel tank as well. You'll see the number on your screen now. So from the fuel consumption perspective, if you are eager for a real fuel miser, it might be worth waiting for a hybrid version later on. At the time I'm filming this, which is early 2025, there is no ANCAP rating for the Kia K4. It is expected to be published in the second quarter of 2025. So if you need to wait for that for whatever reason, well, that's when you can expect the results to be published. But it does have a heap of standard spec and tech across the entire range, and that's despite the fact there is a safety pack still for the entry-level version if you want it. So you can buy the S grade, and you're getting autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist and a form of junction detection. But if you choose the safety pack, you get a more advanced autonomous emergency braking system with head-on protection and some other different junction turning AEB. So if you need that, well, it's worth spending the extra money. You do get a few extra features as well, as I said, but all versions come with things like lane keeping assistance. There's a blind spot monitoring system as well. There's adaptive cruise control, and if you step up the range, you get better adaptive cruise control with traffic jam assist and highway assistance, so it can actually do some lane changing and that sort of stuff for you. Plus, there's a driver monitoring camera system, but thankfully it's not too annoying. It just keeps an eye on your eyes to make sure that you're not distracted. It's not too annoying, but it is a little bit frustrating. The most frustrating thing about this car though is the traffic sign recognition system. So it will beep if you change traffic zones or if you're speeding over the limit that it thinks it is. It thinks it is, that's the important part there, because it can get it wrong. It will beep and bong at you, and it does get on my nerves, and it might get on yours, but you'll have to test drive one to find out. There's a reversing camera and front and rear parking sensors as standard as well, and there's also 7 airbags for this car. Dual front, front side, a front center airbag, and curtain coverage for both rows on the window seats. Not bad at all, but yeah, just test drive it and make sure that the safety tech doesn't get on your nerves. Kia Australia continues to offer a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, and it is still one of the best that you can get in our market. Plus, there's also the option of having up to 8 years of roadside assistance included if you service with Kia. So there's a big network of dealerships across Australia for Kia, and the servicing is, well, something you need to keep in mind. So there's a 12-month 10,000k service interval for the turbo petrol models and 12 months and 15,000 Ks for the non-turbo petrol models. So yes, the turbo will be a bit needier when it comes to the maintenance stuff. It's also going to cost you a bit more because you have to take it back more often, right? So the average cost for the servicing is on your screen, so you can compare between the 2-litre and the 1.6 turbo. And you tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. It's getting a bit pricey in terms of the servicing costs, I reckon. So there you have it, the Kia K4. It's a bigger car with a bigger price than the existing Cerato, but it's also a big improvement in a lot of ways. Would you choose this car over any of the alternatives I mentioned earlier? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell, and I'll see you when I see you.